Greetings and salutations, listener. Here we are, back with the Coco and Adults podcast. I'm not Coco.
And I'm not Adults.
And we're doing real reviews because we're real people.
That's right.
Isn't that right, Coco?
That's right.
Tell me, what are we doing? People clicked on it so they know what we're talking about, but tell them anyways what we're talking about in this episode of the Coco and Dolls podcast.
Today we are talking about the exciting conclusion of Season 2 of The Mandalorian. It's Episode 8, Chapter 16, The Rescue. So this episode is all about Mando teaming up with Cara Dune, Boba Fett, Fennec Shand, who is apparently the character that Ming-Na Wen has been playing for the past few episodes, as well as Bo-Katan and Bo-Katan's Mandalorian friend. They all team up to go save Baby Yoda from Moff Gideon. They crash his Imperial light cruiser. The non-Boba Fett and Mando, the ladies basically, go storm the bridge because Bo-Katan wants to get the dark saber back from Moff Gideon because whoever has the dark saber has claim to the throne of Mandalore. While they're doing that, Mando goes to try to save Baby Yoda. Mando manages to fend off some dark troopers and send them into space. But after he saves Baby Yoda and confronts Moff Gideon and takes Moff Gideon to the bridge because Moff Gideon had gone into the jail cell where Baby Yoda is being held. While everybody is back on the bridge, the Dark Troopers manage to make their way back to the ship from space, and there's a final confrontation where Dark Troopers get vanquished, but not by anybody in the bridge. Mm-hmm. It's a spoiler alert. Mm-hmm. Somebody from past movies returns to train Baby Yoda. And should I tell them what happens with Baby Yoda at the end?
Well, yes. I think that we have given them spoiler alerts enough.
Okay. So, spoiler alert, it's actually Luke. It's CGI'd, young, Return of the Jedi era, Mark Hamill.
Corvette Summer era.
He and his X-Wing and R2 fly up. They kill all the Dark Troopers. Baby Yoda goes with Luke and R2 to do some Jedi training, leaving all the humans on the bridge.
Sitting there.
And at the very end, in a scene after the final credits, Boba Fett goes back to Jabba's palace and kills Jabba's right-hand man who was sitting on the throne at Jabba's palace, and then Boba Fett himself sits on the throne at Jabba's palace, leading to a title card saying, The Book of Boba Fett, coming December 2021.
So there's a lot going on in this season finale.
There is.
As there should be, actually,
right.
Because as this episode was starting up, I was thinking, I'm not feeling it right now. I'm not feeling any sort of tension like I was in the episodes leading up to it. I was thinking, this is going to be good, this is going to be good. And then as it started, it was kind of slow in my mind. It was like, there's another one of those bargains where Boba Fett and Mando walk into the canteen and talk to the lady Mandos, and they're like, hey, you need to help us. And they were like, no, we're not going to help you. You can't make us. And so then there's a bargain struck, and the ladies say, we'll help you if you do this one thing for us. So we have this theme throughout the entire season has returned. But after that, it kind of picked up a little bit, and it became a little bit more thrilling and a little bit more tense. But I have a number of questions, Coco, that stem from this particular episode, and I'm hoping you can entertain some of them.
I'll try.
Okay, so the first thing that I have, as we said, listener, spoiler alert, it's Luke who comes near the end and saves the day. And it's young Luke. So in Empire Strikes Back, doesn't Luke meet an older Grogu, also known as Yoda? Mm-hmm. Doesn't he meet him for the first time, and they're both much older, and they don't seem to know each other? Like I'm the timeline here is not working for me.
Well, because Baby Yoda is not Yoda.
It's a different Yoda.
Yeah, it's one of Yoda's species. But not.
So it's not the Yoda.
Right. People just called him Baby Yoda because he didn't have a name, and he looks like Yoda. So okay, so that makes sense. But now, wouldn't older Luke, when he ran into
the real Yoda in Empire Strikes Back have some sort of like, oh, I met a guy like you, and he was a baby?
Well, so The Mandalorian takes place after the fall of the Empire. So it takes place after the events of Return of the Jedi.
Ah,
Yeah.
so young Luke in this particular Mandalorian episode looked much younger to me than even Star Wars Luke.
Oh, really?
So that's
Okay.
what I'm confused that they CGI'd him so smooth
Oh, okay.
that he looked like he was much younger. So that makes sense now that I know this is a bridge, between the series and the franchise. But I was confused by that.
And I will interject here, listener, and say that I actually thought the CGI was pretty good. The CGI of young Luke compared to the CGI of young Leia at the end of Rogue One. Like, young Leia at the end of Rogue One was freaking creepy. Like, that takes you straight out of the movie. Like, even CGI'd Grand Moff Tarkin is not as bad as CGI'd young Leia. So I actually thought CGI young Luke was really good.
Yeah.
I thought his voice was a little weird. Like, I don't know if Mark Hamill had to record his dialogue on his iPhone because of the pandemic and send it over, and there were some audio issues, but I thought the audio was a lot more jarring than the visuals.
Well, and it didn't seem to sync either. Like the voice and the image didn't seem. It almost like he was moving his lips kind of thing, and it didn't really work. So that threw me off a little bit. But I thought overall the episode was really good. It was a little bit disappointing in that I didn't think it was as thrilling as the previous episodes had built up to be. Like, I was looking for something humongous. This, in terms of the Star Wars universe, is humongous. But to me, it was a little bit softer ending than I thought, but still really, really good, and a pretty good cap, I think, to the series. Now, a couple of the other questions I had regarding this was, so the Dark Troopers come in a big way.
Yes.
And you and I were talking about this, Coco, when we were watching it. It's like, why didn't they just, because the guys were all on the bridge.
And the Dark Troopers, we get official confirmation, are droids.
Right.
They are not stormtroopers who are, living things
Right.
inside of like a silly looking uniform. They're actual droids.
Which listener might know this from previous podcasts, but I always thought stormtroopers were androids to begin with, like dating back to Star Wars.
Right.
And now I'm like, oh, they're shooting real people. Like, that's not nearly as fun. But it also explains why they're such terrible shots.
Right. And as it turns out, the Dark Troopers are really bad shots too, because when Luke shows up and he's just like laying waste to all of them, like suddenly they turn into stormtroopers and
They're shooting each other and shooting
Right.
their own feet and
Totally.
aiming 5 feet to the left of Luke. And,
Right. Suddenly it turns into like a Benny Hill episode. But when, Mando and everybody else is taking on the Dark Troopers, like they're evil, accurate, murdering
Right,
machines.
right.
So it was really kind of funny, actually.
so I dare you, listener, now to watch that scene without that music going through your head, the Benny Hill music.
Sorry, listener.
So the question I had regarding the Dark Troopers was, though, like, because they're all on the bridge, they've stormed the bridge, the good guys have taken over the ship. Why don't they just push the button that says pause or
Right.
what? Pause the Dark Troopers.
Right.
Stand down. Here's the button, because there's a button.
Right.
There's a button for everything.
Uh-huh.
And-
Because you have to power up the Dark Troopers
Right.
because there's such a drain on like the ship's Wi-Fi or whatever.
I can see the lights kind of dim a little bit.
That they have to be kept in like one cold storage unit, and then when they're needed, they press a button to power up the Dark Troopers, and it takes a few minutes for them to be
Right,
fully
of course it
powered up.
does,
Yeah. So,
Brr, like when the old Macs used to boot up, right? Brr.
so if they have to press the button to power up the Dark Troopers, why
Right.
can't you just press the button to power down the
Or
Dark
just
Troopers?
reverse what you just did. Like, there are many things with the Dark Troopers. Like, they were really cool. They were very, like you said, Coco, they're very Terminator-esque. They're very intimidating, very scary, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is that not only can they shut them down, but they were located in this room that actually had an emergency, I don't know what the door was, out into outer space.
Yeah,
why
like an
were they-
airlock. Yeah.
Like, so why wouldn't why wouldn't Boba Fett, after they're in there and they've incapacitated all the stormtroopers and all that stuff, why wouldn't he circle back and then shoot that particular part of the ship? and blow it up. And then, so there's a lot of holes in the whole Dark Trooper thing. I mean, it was pretty cool, but I think logic took a back seat in that particular.
In the grand tradition of Star Wars, logic has taken a back seat.
Right. Like the whole thing with the thumb drive in the last episode that we watched, which was completely ridiculous. And yet somehow the Dark Troopers can be commanded from the bridge to do these amazing things and be immortal and all that sort of stuff. There's some real pauses there. But anyway, what did you think? I've done a lot of talking here, Coco. You tell me.
Well, did you have any more questions, or you?
I have many more, but I think it's probably time for you to listen, or you to talk, because the listeners like, I really rather listen to Coco.
So I loved this episode.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. The opening bargain between Mando and Boba Fett and the two Mandalorian ladies didn't bother me, because it was. Okay. I knew you were going to say like, oh, just help me with this one thing, but I mean, it was 2 minutes of the episode, so it wasn't like a protracted 15-minute negotiation, and we knew that he was going to have to storm the Imperial cruiser to get Baby Yoda back anyways, so it wasn't like he was doing something that was unrelated to what he wanted in order to get to what he wanted. Like, he was doing something that tied in with what he wanted.
I was thinking, like, if, one of those things I would like to see is, we'll help you with Grogu if you just do the chicken dance.
Oh my God, that would be amazing. That would be awesome.
So that would be like a bargain that I would like to see.
I would love to see Mando do the chicken dance in like the full Mandalorian armor.
Like, that would be awesome.
I'm really sorry, listener, that now you have the Benny Hill music and the chicken dance music going through your head all day after listening to this episode of our podcast.
Earworm. That's what we're all about here at Coco and Daltz, is about the earworms.
So yeah, so that the bargain didn't bother me. I thought the action was really good. I loved that the four ladies were just kicking ass and killing all the stormtroopers and just storming the bridge and taking everybody out.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, I thought that was super duper cool. I liked that we got to see Grogu again. He took like an episode or two off while he was kidnapped. I was surprised that they left Moff Gideon alive. Like, maybe there's a reason for that. I mean, you don't want to waste Giancarlo Esposito,
right,
but because he's such a good bad guy.
Yeah, he is.
And you can do more stuff with him. And like I said previously, I haven't really read or watched any of the expanded universe stuff, so I don't know if maybe he's going to come into play in some of the other series that are being launched on DisneyPlus. But I mean, you just know that guy is going to do anything he can to try to kill everybody and keep Baby Yoda for his nefarious purposes. So I was kind of surprised that they didn't take him out when they had the opportunity. I freaking loved Luke and R2 coming back. Like, that was amazing. Like, I had like 18 orgasms when R2 showed up, and Daltz can testify to that because,
yes.
Yeah.
Because I felt the wrath of that.
Because I'm one of those people who likes the fan service. Like, I know a lot of people are kind of getting antsy with like a lot of the fan service elements that have been coming in the final episodes of this season, but I mean, I freaking loved it. I am sad because Baby Yoda went with Luke. So what's this going to mean for season 3 of The Mandalorian? Like, they obviously set it up. Mando took the Darksaber off Moff Gideon, and when he tried to give it back to Bo-Katan, apparently the Darksaber has to be won in battle. So even though, Mando doesn't have any interest in the throne of Mandalore, he was just like, here, I yield, take it. And she was like, no, I can't do that. I have to win it. So they're setting it up for like some battle between those two. But
there's mojo attached to the Darksaber.
Yeah, but like, I want to still see Baby Yoda. So what's going to happen now with Baby Yoda? And
he's going to get his own series. Don't worry about it. Disney's got like 19 series planned for next year.
That would be awesome if we just saw like Luke's Jedi Academy. If that was just like,
is it going to be like Jack Black's School of Rock,
or like High School Musical? They bring Zac Efron back
because we love Zac. As you know, listener, we love Zac.
Yeah, so I enjoyed it. I really loved it. I thought it was a great end to the season. Like, maybe there could have been a little bit more fireworks, but I'm not going to be angry about it. So
yeah, it was a pretty good cap. I mean, I think this season probably could have been about 5 or 6 episodes.
Yeah, we could have cut off the first 2 episodes for sure.
Yeah, and maybe even 3 as far as I'm concerned. But it could have been a lot shorter than it was. But ended really well, which is what you wanted to do.
Right. Basically, the last 5 episodes at least, every single one was good. Nothing was extraneous. It was I think Dalt's only complaint is that Carl Weathers hasn't shown up for a few episodes.
Yeah.
So we want Grief Karga to come back, but
I wanted more Apollo Creed. I gotta admit.
Yeah, for sure.
And I should say, for the record, in the last episode, I said that we were going to see Bill Burr come and save the day at the end with the sniper, and that was not the case. So I want to, I made a false prediction there. I want to admit that right now.
I'm happy that Luke came back with R2, but I would have also been extremely happy if it had been Obi-Wan coming back to save Baby Yoda, because I love Obi-Wan. Like, Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan was by far the best thing about the prequel trilogy, which I said if you listen to our prequel trilogy review way back around episode 66, because of Order 66, we did that on purpose.
We did.
So I would have been extremely happy if it had been Obi-Wan, but I'm also extremely happy that it was Luke and R2, because R2 is actually my favorite character in the entire Star Wars universe. So
I will admit that the dramatic conclusion where we were trying to figure out who this guy was probably the best part of this whole series and season end series, and as it turns out to be Luke coming off the X-Wing fighter and dominating the bad guys, the Dark Troopers, the suddenly inept Dark Troopers. Right. As he's dominating them, we're like, who is it? Who is it? Is it this person? Is it that person? Is it this person? Oh, maybe it's Anakin. Maybe it's Luke. Maybe it's Obi-Wan. Like, we were trying to figure out who it was. And I was like, well, it's not Bill Burr. I can tell you that much.
Bill Burr suddenly has a lightsaber and is like going crazy.
He went to Luke's academy.
Right,
and
totally.
he got like valedictorian graduation.
He did like the accelerated schedule at Luke's academy. He got like his GED and
came back.
Right.
And he's like, hey, what? Who knows?
So overall this season, you except for the first like 3 episodes, you were happy?
Yeah, I think it was good. I was disappointments first. Disappointed that it wasn't more Gina and wasn't more Carl, because I love those guys, and I thought that they were, especially Gina Carano. Gina Carano was kind of less consistent this season in her acting than she was in the first season. In the first season, I didn't really see her acting very much, even though I was expecting to, because she didn't come from an acting background. This season, she wasn't as good. There were a couple of cringy scenes where she was in it, but I liked her overall. I mean, she just kicked some serious butt in the entire episode, in the entire series and season. So she was good this year. And the beginning of the season was not as strong as I've mentioned. But it closed really well. It didn't have I think the novelty factor is so tough in the second season. It's like making a second album or what have you, or you come up with a really good book and then the second book has got to be so much better. I think that they failed a little bit in that regard, but maybe that's why they threw those first 3 episodes under the bus and then were like, well, we're not going to top last season, but let's do what we can. And then it was almost like a break in terms of the first season and the second season. That those first 3 episodes to me were like a break from our expectations, maybe, and then it finished really strongly. So I would say overall, I'd say it's probably a 7 out of 10.
Wow.
So it was good. It was better. It closed really well, like I said, which is important. Coco, what do you think of the entire season?
So yeah, the first 2 episodes just laid a giant egg for me. They were extremely disappointing. I don't mind the 3rd episode as much as you do. So I think if you chop off the first 2 episodes of this season, it would be amazing. It would be like probably an A+ for me, but the first 2 episodes bring it down. So you're right. The novelty factor isn't there as much, but I mean, I'm fine with that. So I'd say overall, if I gave season 1 an A, I'd give season 2 like an A-.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. In the ballpark, right?
Yeah, totally. Like except for those first 2 episodes, there wasn't any drop off for me in quality from the first season, especially like episodes 4 through 8 were just fantastic. I really enjoyed them. I am worried about Mando and Baby Yoda getting separated for season 3. But we didn't mention last week, and we need to mention today, we have now seen Mando take off his mask twice.
Yes.
When he had to give Baby Yoda permission to go with Luke because Baby Yoda didn't want to leave Mando. So Luke was like, yeah, you got to tell him he can go. And so Mando took off his mask, and he was like crying, and he was like, "It's okay, kid. You know, you can go. I'll see you again." And
He wasn't weeping though. He wasn't like,
you could see the tears in his eyes,
Right.
but he wasn't just like,
he wasn't ugly crying.
right. So
Mando ugly crying.
so that was a very touching moment.
It was, yes. And what's going to be next for The Mandalorian? Do we know what's happening for season 3? Will there be a season 3?
There is a season 3. It is allegedly premiering on Christmas Day of 2021.
Wow,
So
a whole year from now.
So that means we get up, we watch Die Hard, and then we immediately stream season 3 premiere of The Mandalorian. That sounds like the perfect Christmas.
This is Christmas at the Coco and Daltz household right now.
Everybody is jealous.
Right.
Well,
they are anyway, because this is what we do.
That's true.
They want to get paid the big bucks like we do to do what we do. Watch movies and talk about it.
Why wouldn't you want to get paid big bucks to watch Mando and talk about it?
Exactly. So anything else to talk about with The Mandalorian, the series, this particular episode?
I'm sure as soon as we stop taping, I will think of something, but right now I'm drawing a blank.
So you can check that in the extras, listener.
That's right.
The DVD extras.
Right.
Oh, Coco with a made in Tatooine episode. I don't know.
That's exactly what's going to happen.
That's exactly what's going to happen. So thanks for joining us, listener. We appreciate you listening to the podcast. We appreciate your downloads. We appreciate you sharing and liking and commenting and going to cocoanddalts.com and donating.
Yes.
Hit that donate button and just keep donating, because otherwise we've got to get real jobs.
Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that. For another episode of the podcast, thanks for joining us. I'm not Coco.
And I'm not Daltz.